What it is, people, Fahir here from awesometudes.com. And what we're gonna cover in this video is a concept called loops. And we use loops to have a repetition of a single task. So if we want one task to repeat multiple times, we use loops. Now, to make things clear, let us just cover it. And the first and most famous loop in the world is called a for loop. And the context or the body or the concept of that loop goes like this. So we type for, and then you need to give it a condition inside of these parentheses. So usually it goes like this. Int I is equal to 0, then semicolon. As long as I is less than, let's say, 10, increment I by plus plus. So, whoa, what is going on here? Well, for, and now we have a condition. So for int, or integer variable named I, which is equal to 0, as long as I is less than 10, increment I and do the following. First, let me explain this right here because this is the first time we see it. I++ means this, means I is equal to I plus 1. A shorthand for this, or excuse me, a shortcut for typing this is simply typing plus plus. This means we are adding 1 to the value of I. So no matter what value is, we are adding 1. So this right here, this is the same thing, but a shortcut for it is typing plus plus. We can also type plus plus I like this, and this means increment the value of I and then use it. This right here means use the current value of I and then increment to it 1. But here we are first adding 1 to I and then we are using it. So that's the difference. And what does this body mean? What does this loop mean? Again, we're going to read it and I'm going to explain everything. So when you go from the left side and start reading it, this means for integer I, which is currently equal to 0. So this is the first condition, or this is the beginning of the loop. As long as I is less than 10, now this is the condition. So as long as the value of I, which is currently equal to 0, as long as that value is less than 10, do what is here in the loop and also increment I by 1. So let's print I and see its value. So I'm going to say print and I'm going to see the value of I. And here we need to type is, of course. So is, and I'm going to say plus I, like this. What do you think the value of I is going to be? It's going to be, and let me just go here and show it to you. So when I run the console, it's going from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, up to 9. But if you see here in the console, it is being printed 10 times. And if you counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So this is printed 10 times. But why is the value, the last value is 9? Didn't we type here as long as I is less than 10? Well, yes, we typed it. But when I is equal to 10, this condition here will not be true because 10 is not lower than 10. And that's the point here. But it is printed from 0, including 0 up to 9. So in total, 10 times. And now everything that we want to be executed, we print, or yeah, I'm saying print because I'm reading it here, but we put that between these curly brackets. So all the code that we want to execute, we put it here. If we have a function or if we want to do something else, we would put that code and execute it how many times we want. In this case, we are executing that 10 times. Now, this is not the only loop that we have, and I'm going to comment this out. We also have a loop called a while loop, and it goes like this. So while, open close parentheses, open close curly brackets. For the while loop, the condition like this one in the for loop is a little bit different. So the condition that we put here needs to evaluate to be true if we want to execute the while loop. So if we want to rewrite this, what we wrote for the for loop, if we want to rewrite it here in the while loop, then what we need to do is we need to type it like this. So we need to say int I is equal to 0. And here we need to give the condition. So as long or while I is less than 10, so we are essentially asking here or telling us, just read the code, it's like reading a story. So while I is less than 10, do the following. So here we can print, so here we can use and print the value of I, and let me just copy this and paste it right here. So the value of I, and we can print it. But one really important thing, and you should bookmark this, when you are using a while loop, you need to make sure that this condition here eventually evaluates to be false. How you can do that? Well, below, here we are going to write, because we are checking as long as I is less than 10. Currently, I is equal to 0. If we leave it like that, this will be an infinite loop and our program will crash. So we need to increment I. So here I'm going to say I++, simply like this. This is going to add 1 to I, which I talked about before. So it's simply going to take the current value of I and it's going to be equal to I plus 1. So it's simply taking the current value of I, adding 1 to it, and assigning that value back to I variable. Why? Well, let's say we loop 1 times, 2 times, 3 times, 1,000 times, but we are not incrementing I. And the condition here, as long as I is less than 10. I is currently 0, and 0 is forever less than 10. So this loop will run forever. But if we add this I here, plus plus, that means we are incrementing I, and this is going to run 10 times. Again, we are going to see the same printing as we did here. So the value of I is 0 up to 9. Notice here, I'm going to clear the console first, run it now. And again, we see the same outcome. So the value of I is from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 and 9, of course. But as I said, this is a different loop and we need to add this condition. If we don't add this condition, then this loop will never finish and our program will crash. The computer will explode. No, I'm just kidding. Don't worry, the computer will not explode, but the program will crash. And you can test that if you want. I'm not gonna do that because I don't want to reopen the program while I am recording. And we have one more loop, which is called a do-while loop. And how does that go? So it goes like this. We type do, open close parentheses, or curly brackets, excuse me. And here we add while, open close parentheses, and we end the statement like this. But here we now need to add this condition. So I'm going to take int I, which is equal to 0. And here we need to say as long as I is less than 10, for example. Now you are wondering what is the difference between this and this. You also see while here, but here you see do and while. And by the way, we need to put the code here. So code goes here that we want to execute. It does not go after this while like this. This is a no-no and it does not work. So yeah, it goes between the curly brackets of the do. Now the difference between the while and the do-while loop is following. The while loop first checks this condition. So it first checks the condition if the condition here is true. So if I is less than 10, then execute the code. If I is not less than 10, do not execute this code. But a do-while loop will first execute the code that's here, and then it will check for the condition. So are you with me? The do-while loop first will execute the code here, and then it will check the condition of that code. So if we do something like this, if I say print, and I'm going to copy this again. So here I'm going to copy it, put it here, save it, and go back, clear the console. We are going to see the same output, but I'm going to show you something in a second. Oh, actually, I forgot to put... Oh, no, please don't crash on me, please. I forgot to put here... I++. This is what I was talking about. You see, Unity now crashed on me. Not responding. You see, this is what happens when you have an infinite loop. Yeah. And don't ever do that. So again, make sure that you finish or that you add a condition that will evaluate to be false eventually. So going back, I've added here I++. And you were watching this video and were like, look at him, man, he did not add a condition, his program's gonna crash. But yeah, I don't want to talk about it. When I run it now, we again see the same output. From 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9. But what I want to show you is the following. As I said, the do loop or do while loop will first execute the code and then it will check for the condition. Let's say I put here I to be equal to 10. Now, 10 is not less than 10, and I can even comment this out now. So I don't need this because, well, why should I? Because I is 10 and the condition is as long as I is less than 10. But still this right here is going to execute. And notice it. When I go here, run our app, notice the value of I is 10. This is what I was talking about. So we first execute this code. The code that you put here in the do clause will be executed at least once. So at least once it will be executed, then it will check for the condition. Now, checking for the condition, if the condition is not true, so if this right here, if I is not less than 10, we will not execute this code again. But my point is that this code here will be executed at least once. So it will be executed at least once, and yeah, this is the difference between the do while and the while loop. Essentially, there is nothing hard for these loops, that is. So we have the for loop, while, and do while loop. Again, while you are using the while loop, make sure that you add a condition that will evaluate eventually to be false. And you saw a moment ago what happens if you don't do that. The program will crash because this is an infinite loop, then it will never stop. And the same thing goes for the do while loop. For the for loop, the condition is within the body. So you type it like this for the variable that you declare, as long as that variable is lower than some value, increment it by 1, and repeat the code that's here. And using this lower or less than 10, here you are saying that this code is going to be executed 10 times. If you say 20, then the code here will be executed 20 times, 30, so on and so forth. Same goes here, while this, and here also while this. Let me just check here. I don't think that we used for loops. No, we did not use anywhere for loops in our previous project, but that's okay. We will use loops a lot in the projects that are upcoming. So this was it for loops and while loops and do while loops. Fahir here from awesometudes.com, and I will see you in the next video.